Hello, welcome. My name is Michaela. I'm a PhD student at the University of Tübingen and I do a bunch of videos about my life here in Germany and my studies and all that, but I also do some other stuff about our life here, traveling and books and all this different kind of stuff. And I know the lighting is horrible, I'm sorry, but I'm basic and so welcome. I have been trying to make a video for the longest time of me reading Murtag as like a reading vlog, and I am just a slow reader. I've realized when it comes to physical books I'm a slow reader because I spend my whole day reading for my studies. That I find reading a book is, I love it, don't get me wrong, I love it, especially one like Murtag where it's like fantasy and dragons and it's very different to my studies, but it's slow going. And so I thought rather than just like continuing on with that and just waiting for the day it comes out, I want to be doing other book videos. And so I thought I'd do like a what I'm reading at the moment as well as books I've bought, just general vibe video. And yeah, because my primary mode of book consumption is actually ebooks, and if you haven't tried them yet I would definitely give it a go. It's one of those things where it has to be the right ebook. I have DNF'd some ebooks, audiobooks. I've DNF'd some audiobooks, but really enjoyed the written version because the narrator just isn't it. I've also really not enjoyed some ebooks. Wow, I've really not enjoyed some audiobooks because of the format. Like if it's very email or text heavy, if it's a modern book, it just doesn't come across the same when they're reading it out, and every single line it's like unknown 39654c@gmail.com wrote blah blah blah, and it's too much. And so I think it works depending on the circumstance. Anyway, I primarily read mystery, thriller, dark academia, fantasy, those kind of books on audiobooks because they're quite captivating, they're quite like thought-provoking. Romance books I find a little bit dull on audiobooks. It depends on the speaker, but I prefer those as written books, and so that's kind of where I'm at. But from last year my primary mode of reading was with audiobooks. So I thought I'd take you through the audiobooks that I'm listening to, and like rather than doing like a what I've read lately with physical books, which is what I was trying to do, just not reading enough for that kind of thing. I'm a slow reader here, and so we're gonna do with the whole audiobooks and everything. I have 18 minutes 50 left on my audiobook, and I know that this is the first time I'm speaking in this video, but I thought that I would finish the book, do a live reaction, and then we can chat, because yeah, I feel like I kept going to like stop the audiobook and talking about what I'm doing and everything, and I just didn't. So I just need to finish. I'm so confused right now. I just need to finish, and then we'll chat.
The last we heard, they moved to Galveston. Doesn't he have a call?
What? Okay, I have to say, I feel like this is one of those books that I'm just not smart enough to understand. I have a couple of these books and I finished them and I'm like, I don't know what to feel. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel from it. And I think that's why I liked If We Were Villains so much, is because it felt accessible for a dark academia book. Anyway, long story short, I just finished The Secret History, and when there's a book that I don't quite understand, I have to read through the comments and see what people say, and from there I'm able to like see if I disagree with people or not, and then like find what I rate. So unfortunately I can't rate this book. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's like a 4 stars, because it's something that I enjoyed. I just think I don't understand it, and so I think that's where my problem is lying. I have to say, I did this in 2 bouts. So I use Libby as the app. I've got it through my library in New Zealand, and when I first got The Secret History, I just found it really dull, I have to say. A lot of people told me that part 1 was the interesting part and part 2 was the really dull part. I found it the other way around. I felt like the whole lead up of him going to university and meeting this group of people and trying to get in this in-group, all of that was very like slow and boring and monotonous, and everyone was just getting drunk and everyone was kind of weird, and there just wasn't, I didn't feel like there was any point to it, if that makes sense. And then as soon as the like turning point in the middle of the book happens, I don't want to do any spoilers because I went into this book not knowing anything about it, apart from the fact that it was like the founding book of dark academia, the genre. And so I don't want to spoil anything because this is a no spoilers video. But the turning point that happens right at the end of part 1 going into part 2, if you know, you know. I felt like that's what made the book interesting, because they're dealing with the ramifications of that afterwards, and so it felt like there was purpose to the book other than following a bunch of frankly really rich stuck-up kids going to university, which is the point. It's a critique on high-class academia, I understand that, but it was dull. And so the second half of the book, I have to say, redeemed it. But I definitely need to go through the comments and figure out how I feel about it, because I don't know, I just feel conflicted. So I'll update you on that later. I forgot to say that I picked up the book I think last year, and then with the Libby app, at least with my home library, you can only take books out for a maximum of 28 days, and I didn't finish it in the 28 days. I have to say, I was finding it that dull. And so I let it lapse over and I re-requested it, and I'm like, look, I'll just read it again when it comes back out. And it took like 3 months to get it back. And then when it did come back, I was in another book, and so I paused, I like renewed it and said, bring it back to me, or like offer it to me again in 7 days. And then I finished that book and it still wasn't available, so I started a new book, and then it became available, and I put the new book on hold to finish The Secret History, and I'm glad that I did. I think maybe I was just in a better mindset for it. I wasn't comparing it as much to If We Were Villains, which is the first dark academia book that I read, and I really enjoyed it, probably because I also did theatre when I was younger, and so that side of it was a lot more interesting. I did appeal to the languages side of this because I've done Latin, I haven't done Greek, and so that side of it was nice, but in terms of the theatre side of it, I think it was just more captivating. I also felt like it was an overall better storyline. I'm pretty sure I gave that book 5 stars, and so I felt like I was constantly comparing this book to that book, and especially because If We Were Villains wasn't as slow paced, I found it was just that little bit better. Anyway, I'm now done with that book. I will do an update once I've decided on what I'm going to rate it. But I'm gonna go back to now the book that I was reading, which is Eleanor Oliphant Is Completely Fine. And I have had this book on my to-read list for years, I'm gonna be honest. I think it was Zoe Sugg mentioned it in a video around the same time that, I don't remember who else did it, but some booktuber that I follow mentioned it. And so I put it on my to read list, and I didn't ever listen to it, sorry. I didn't ever read it or anything, I don't know why. And then I saw that it was available, and so I thought I'd pick it up. I have to say, I'm not loving it so far. I think it's the audiobook format that I'm not enjoying. I think it would be a lot more immersive if you were reading it because you don't have somebody's voice in your head. I find that with some books, like the Murtagh book that I'm reading at the moment, one of my comments on one of my videos, I think last year, I reread all of the Aragon books as audiobooks, and there were parts of it that I loved, but I hated the voice for Murtagh because it just felt so not how I'd imagined him, and also because everyone in the book had certain accents and he had a very distinct accent that was very different, and also not a kind of accent that I thought that he would have. And so for me it just didn't sit right. It was one of those things that I just let it happen, but I didn't love it. And so I'm reading the Murtagh book at the moment, and I'm reading it because I don't want to have to deal with accents. I just want to enjoy it in my own head. And I think that Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine is a similar thing where it's fine, but I'm not loving it. And so I'm curious to see where it goes. Maybe I'll get there as soon as the plot actually gets in there. I'm only 19% through, you can see here. I'm only 19% through, and so the blurb, which talks about she ends up having some sort of like functional relationship with a co-worker that she's never really had before, that relationship has just started, and not like a romantic relationship at the moment. It's just like having to interact with each other. That has just started, so I don't know where that's going to go, but I'm assuming that's what the majority of this book is going to be about. And until this point I don't know, haven't gelled with it. Anyway, that is the update on the audiobook front. The other thing to say is that I made a vow that I wouldn't buy any books this year, because last year Luke got me a book advent calendar, and so he bought me 25 books for December, and it was amazing, and I'm still reading through the books. And my goal was either to not buy a book until I finished my whole bookshelf and actually read my TBR, or not buy any books until next year, whichever one came first. The problem is there's a German-American institute here in Tübingen. I've never been before, and one of my colleagues told me that they were doing a book flea market and all of the books were €1. And I feel like there's something about buying secondhand books, and then there's something about buying secondhand books for €1. And so I had to do it. I bought 5 books. And so I thought I'd talk you through the books that I got. The unfortunate thing about this is that it's now adding to my list of books that I have to read before the end of the year if I want to buy books this year. I'm assuming I'm not going to get there, and so I'm just going to have to read the books, start buying books the following year, but it's fine. I had joy in choosing these books. So the first book that I picked up is actually, like, I saw this and I was like, I cannot believe that this is being sold for €1. I'm so excited. It's the autobiography of Lauren Graham, who played Lorelai on Gilmore Girls. And Gilmore Girls is one of those things where it's like, I actually struggle to rewatch the show because I watched it at such a pivotal time in my life that everything that was going on in my life I feel is linked to my watching of that show, and so every time I watch the show it makes me think of that, and so I kind of struggle with it. It's very emotional, but I have such a soft spot in my heart for that show, and so I've always wanted to read this. And I feel like autobiographies, it really depends whether I want to listen to the audiobook or not. Like this book, I'm Glad My Mum Died, I absolutely loved as an audio book because she was the one that read it, and so you feel her emotion as she's reading through it. And the same with Spare, I read that as an audiobook as well, and I loved hearing his voice while he said all these things and the emotion when he talked about his mom and everything. But I feel like this one, I don't know, I'm kind of actually excited to read it in my head, if it makes sense, and not have somebody else's voice in it. I don't know, maybe it would be nice because her voice is so iconic and it's so like Gilmore Girls is like her, and so maybe it would be really nice. But I don't know, I'm so glad to own this and I'm really excited to read it. The next book that I picked up is called The Luminaries. I have heard about this book but I've never read it, and when I saw it I was like, oh, I've heard about this. I love the cover. I think it's beautiful, and also because it was the winner of the Man Booker Prize, and so I think that's where I heard about it, is when it had been nominated. But I I turned it over. I always read blurbs. I always forget what the blurbs say, but I always read the blurbs first. And it's about New Zealand. It's about somebody who travels to New Zealand. I think, because it's 1866, and so I'm pretty sure it's during the gold mine boom in New Zealand, which I know about because of my job. And so, yeah, I thought it'd be super fascinating to read a fiction book about that, because if you don't know, I'm currently working on a project in New Zealand about New Zealand's first women doctors, and the university was built around the time of the gold mine boom, and so I've had to learn about everything that was going on in New Zealand around this time so that I can write the book. And so I thought it would be so fascinating to, like, I don't know, read the fiction around it. So I'm really excited. I know nothing about it, and that's my favorite way to go into a book, is to just not know anything about it. I do have to say, I have only ever in my life, sorry, I have only ever in my adult life, I should clarify, read a book about New Zealand once. Obviously I had to do it in school quite a lot, and there's one series, I genuinely can't remember for the life of me what it's called, but I'll put it up here if I can find it. And this series is what really got me into history. I read it though when I was like 10, and so I can't really claim it as like a book that I loved. The only other book I've read about New Zealand was Greta and Velden. Maybe there's something about, I'll put it up here as well. I hated it. It was, in my opinion, terrible book, and I don't know if to me it felt like a first draft, and so I didn't love it anyway. And then I also didn't love the fact that all of the places that they talked about I knew, and it was really weird to think, I don't know, it's really weird when you know a place that's being written about. I didn't like grow up in New York, for example, so when I read books about New York, it's all like fantastical and it's in my brain as like this fantasy in my imagination. But I find it really hard when I read a book where it's like, oh, they're walking through Auckland University, and I'm like, oh, I went to Auckland University. And while I'm proud of going to Auckland University, I find it really disheartening being like pulled out of the imaginary world. And so I'm really looking forward to the fact that this is about Dunedin and Otago, I'm pretty sure, and I'm curious to see where it goes. The next book that I got is actually a mystery book. I know nothing about this, but I am super into mysteries at the moment, and I was at the beginning of this year, I think, or the beginning of last year, going through my whole Agatha Christie phase on like classic murder mysteries. And this is written by Joyce Porter, which is who was alive from 1924 to 1990. So it's one of those, like, I don't know if it's a classic fiction, if you would say that, but it's from that era, and I just love mystery books from this era. I feel like it's not normally things that I'm used to reading. I feel like some books that I've read that are modern are just kind of predictable, and it feels like you're reading the same book over and over again. But I don't know, there's something about books from this period that are just great, so I'm really excited to try that. I then got some short stories, because for the longest time I've wanted to get into short stories, and I'm really bad at getting into short stories. It's one of those things that I think it's because you have such a short time in a book that I struggle to get into it, but I really want to give it a go, especially because this has Ernest Hemingway and John Steinbeck, and I've always wanted to read stuff from them. And so yes, American short stories. The final book I got, I'm actually going to say I bought because of the cover, because it's a beautiful cover. Even though it's a children's book, it's a beautiful cover. You have to agree with me, it's beautiful. And so I know it's a children's book, but I have this affiliation for children's books. Sometimes they're just so simple, but they have deep, I don't know, messages or whatever. And this is a story about Scandinavia, apparently. I don't actually know that much about it, but I think it's a story about Scandinavia. And so therefore I really want to read it, because I just there's just something so good about a nice children's book that is so simple and so, like, you know, people aren't gonna die. Sometimes I just want to read a book where I know that somebody's not gonna die. So yeah, anyway, those are all the books that I bought at the 5 for 5 book fair. I'm gonna start Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine as my audiobook. I'm still reading Murtagh as my physical book, and then I also have 2 ebooks going. Whoops. One of them is the second book in the Final Empire, I think that's what it's called, by Brandon Sanderson. I'm gonna be honest, I think this is a book that I'm not enjoying as an ebook, and I think that's my problem, is because I love the book. I think it's the kind of thing I need a physical or I'd need ebook for, because I'm struggling with the ebook format. And then also my friend wrote a book, and I read her first book last year, and she's come out with a second book, and it just seems really cute. It's a cozy fantasy novel. It's called Tea with a Minotaur. Let's see if I can get the cover up. But her books are so lovely. It's this one, Tea with a Minotaur. And it's just so cute, and I really loved her last book, and so I'm really excited to read the next one, which is set in the same world as the last one. And so yeah, I'm super excited. But that's my 2 ebooks at the moment, and yeah, I'm gonna leave it here because this video is long enough as it is, and I will see you soon.
Appalachian sunrise meets my skin. Even with my eyes still closed, I can feel it coming in. Golden, golden, I'll follow only golden, 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 golden things.
Hello. It is now the next day, and I thought now is as good a time as any to talk to you. I went to the gym this morning, and I really tried to listen to Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, and it was my first time picking it up again after finishing The Secret History, because I got to like 17% before the renewal for The Secret History came through. And so I thought that I would put it on pause because I wasn't thoroughly enjoying it, and that I'd come back to it after The Secret History. And so I got up to 21% at the gym, and it's not my ideal. I don't know, I just wasn't really understanding it, and I was finding the main character incredibly annoying, and I know that's kind of the point, but it was just, I don't know, it's just not my cup of tea. Anyway, what I normally do in those situations is I go through and look at comments on GoodReads just to see like where people are at, because sometimes people will say like, oh, the beginning was really boring, or like you just gotta push through because at 30% it picks up, kind of thing. I try not to read any spoilers. I just try and read the comments that are, yeah, kind of related to how good the book is or whatever. And there's one book reviewer that I really respect. We seem to have similar taste in books, and so I really like her reviews. Her name's Jessica. I don't know what her full name is. It's literally just Jessica, and she reads a heck of a lot. I don't know how she reads this much, but she reads a heck of a lot. Anyway, she only gave it 2.5 stars, and she said that it was one of those things where like she kept waiting for it to get good, or she kept waiting for the turning point or the big reveal or the explanation, but she said she just got to the end of the book and she's like, oh, that's it. And it wasn't anything, I don't know, it just wasn't drawing her in, kind of thing. And she got really frustrated at the main character as well, and she didn't really understand how many people found it quite like endearing or cathartic or anything. And then I read a few more, and it kind of just all said the same thing, where if you're not enjoying it from the beginning, you're not going to enjoy the rest of the book through. It seems to be people who were hooked right at the beginning are the ones that ended up enjoying it the most. And so I decided to DNF it. I gave it a good try, but I just couldn't, but I decided that I'm trying this year to only invest my time in books that I'm enjoying or that I feel like I'm going to get something out of. And because this is a fiction book, I don't feel the need to keep going with it. Anyway, I DNF'd it. It's the 3rd book this year that I've DNF'd so far. I used to pride myself on not being a DNF'er, but this is, yeah, it's the year of DNFing apparently. Long story short, I needed to find a new book, and so I looked on Libby, and unfortunately one of the books that I wanted to read, which is 5 Survive by Holly Jackson, I thought I was feeling myself getting into a slump where with the Eleanor Oliphant book I was like avoiding it, and so I didn't want to listen to it, which meant that I didn't want to read because I felt like I couldn't start anything else because that was the book I was reading. And so I decided to read something that I knew would get me interested, and I know that Holly Jackson's books generally like that. And so it wasn't available on Libby, but Spotify has changed the regulations where if you have a premium account you now get 15 free hours a month to listen to audiobooks, which is brilliant, and I can't believe it's taken them this long to do it. I'm very thankful for it, but it was available on Spotify, so I started listening to it, and I'm currently 10% through. Obviously I've got a work day today, so I can't spend my whole day listening to it, and I've just been listening to it while like heating up food or eating breakfast and that kind of thing, so I'm not very far through, but currently very interesting. I'm finding it kind of disjointed seeing it from like first person perspective, or at least that's how it feels, but the protagonist refers to themselves by their first name, if that makes sense. Kind of disjointing, but it's interesting. I assume that's part of her character, and I'm very curious to see where that goes. But yeah, no, currently really enjoying it, and now it's the end of lunchtime because I finished eating and I gotta get back to work, so yeah. Okay, so confession, I did finish 5 Survive, and I totally forgot to film it. I was working on Saturday, yesterday, it is Sunday today. I was working on Saturday and I was just copying over some information, and I was listening to it, and then I realized I had like, I got to the really intense bit. Pretty much everything culminated in the last maybe half an hour. Got to the really intense bit, and I was like, okay, I need to just like listen to this because I'm not working. So I paused my work timer and I just sat there, and I was like at my work desk, and I was like until the end of the book. I was so shocked, and yeah, I ended up finishing it and I totally forgot to film, but it's fine. I was on like a really tight timeline yesterday because we had some friends coming over to watch Eurovision, and so it was just one of those days. Anyway, I finished the book and I gave it 5 stars. I'm bringing it up on GoodReads so you can see, but I just I feel like with Holly Jackson, she's one of those authors that just, I always know it's going to be a good time, even if it's not a 5-star read. It's such good quality that it's just, I don't know, like the reason I read this book is because I was trying to get out of the getting into a slump with reading, or like, yeah, getting into a rut with reading. And I was like, okay, I just need a book by an author that I love and that I know is going to give me a good time. And so yeah, that was pretty much 5 Survive. I wrote my, I don't really write long reviews on GoodReads that much, but with this one I was so, like, when you just finish a book and you're so in the moment and you're just like, oh, I need to write this. And I didn't even go down a comments hole. There was one thing that I wanted to know, and so I looked that up in the comments, but I was just so happy with it, and I feel like I didn't see the twist going. I mean, one of the things I wrote in my comment, because a lot of people were like, oh, the twist is so predictable, and yes, I can see how you'd feel that way, but I feel like with this book it was so in the present that I wasn't really thinking, how's this gonna end? I was thinking, how are they gonna get through this present situation? And like, I think that's why I didn't see the twists coming, because I wasn't thinking about how's this book gonna end. It's literally, the whole book is over the 8 hours, and so much happens in the 8 hours that I'm like, oh my gosh, how are they gonna get through this scene? And I think that's why it was so hooking for me, because just every single second felt like, oh my gosh, what's happening next, kind of thing. And so yeah, it was really good, and the characters were really compelling. I do feel like too, like a lot of the comments said that Red and Oliver were the most compelling characters, and it took me by surprise at first, because I was like, but but Oliver, like, really? And I think the more I thought, none of this is spoilers by the way, I think the more I thought about it, it made sense why people were saying that, because I think those two characters were the ones that were spent the most time on describing. And so whether you like Red or not, whether you like Oliver or not, I think that doesn't really matter, because the point is you get to know them. And I now agree with that comment, and yeah, no, I think that it was just the way that they developed as characters was so good. And I think as well with Red, a lot of people didn't like her, and I really liked her. I felt like she was the most honest character I've read in a long time, in the sense that obviously not honest as in like telling the truth, but honest as in the way she thought about stuff, and like, I don't know, like the guilt that you read in her from literally page 1, and like the insecurity and the way that she just like goes through life, like the amount of times where she's like, oh, should I say that? I shouldn't say that, it's just in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, I relate to this so much. And so obviously I don't relate to her situation, but I saw myself so much in her as a character that I just really related to it. And so I think I didn't quite understand why certain people said that they didn't like her, like they found her quite intolerable. And I was like, oh, does that mean you'll find me intolerable? I don't know. Anyway, I need to stop talking about this, but 5 survive, 5-star review. I'm so happy. And basically I'm a little bit stuck because both of the books that I have ordered on Libby are not available. I totally thought, basically my problem is I have the app in German. I don't know if you can see this. And so, I mean, my German's good. I can read most German, but I thought that something was available, and so I ordered it, and then it said that I'm next in line. And so now it's like, oh, I was actually really excited to read that book, and now I don't know what to do, because I don't want to order something else, because if I'm next in line for this book, then it means that I'm gonna start the next book, read like, I don't know, an hour of it, and then this next book's gonna come available. So I don't know, maybe I'll just take a break from audiobooks for the next little while. And it is 11:30, which is not ideal, but I thought that I might just read like a chapter of Murtagh, because I've had a pretty intense day with work. I have worked for 8.5 hours today. It's just been one of those days, and I just feel like reading something kind of lighthearted and not very intense. And where I finished Murtagh was on a cliffhanger, and I still don't know, like, oh, it was such a big twist that I mean, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know how he's gonna, oh, I don't know. So I'm curious to see where this goes. And yeah, I thought I might just read a chapter or 2 or something before bed. But yeah, that's my, oh my gosh, sorry. The light just came on next door and it gave me a bit of a fright. Anyway, I'm gonna leave you here, and yeah.
I would be up waiting for you if you had to leave. I would wait a lifetime if you were at sea. I just wanna say that I feel that our love is real.
This has probably been the world's messiest vlog. Giving. Nobody wants washing in the background. So I just got back from the gym, and I just finished my latest audiobook. I will put it up here. I was going to show you on my phone, like, hey look, I'm watching it on Spotify, or listening to it on Spotify, but my phone is currently propping up the camera, so I will just leave it there to prop it up. I've also just washed my hair, and I'm trying to wait and see if leave-in conditioner will do what everything online says it does by not giving me the flyaways, because I have a million flyaways all the time. My hair is unbelievably frizzy. So anyway, this is hopefully, fingers crossed, going to be the last update in this video. I feel like this has been the most chaotic video, and I really should have cut it short, but I went through a phase of reading really slowly and then reading tons of books, and then reading really slowly, and then reading tons of books. And so I don't actually know how long this video is because I have been too scared to start editing it. Anyway, I think the last thing that I filmed was me picking up Game of Thrones, and I listened to half of the book, so it's split into 2 parts on Libby. You can download part 1 and part 2, and it took me I think a month and a half to get through part 1. It was 15 hours and it was a book. It was fine. I basically felt like I wanted to give it a good shot, and I just didn't really care too much, if that makes sense. Like, I understood the world, I understood the characters, I gave it enough time for the world building and everything, but I just, like, I don't know, I felt like the one thing that was really putting me off it was the shock factor. I feel like the way that the writer was writing was purely for shock. He was like, I don't know, like very, very old school mentalities towards women, which I think he was probably trying to do because it was trying to be like a medieval type book, but at the same time just like super graphic sexual scenes and super graphic fighting scenes, if that kind of makes sense. Like, there was a lot of gore. For example, there was one scene where they were holding a tournament and it was supposed to be jousting, and this guy's horse wasn't, it's Gregor I think, his horse was not performing well, and so he lost his match, and so he just like turns around and just like brutally stabs this horse, and then you just learn all about it like falling to the ground and dying, and that cannot leave my brain. I was shocked, and I really don't like animal violence in books. I'm gonna be honest, I feel like it's totally unnecessary, and I kind of understand like the point that the author was trying to make, but it just, all of the shock scenes felt so unnecessary. But I know that's his style of writing, and I know that a lot of people are drawn to it because of that kind of thing. And so I've decided to not continue with the series. Yeah, it's not my thing. And I've decided if I really care, I can go and, I don't know, like read up a synopsis or something, but yeah, moved on from that. Anyway, I felt like I wanted a stark contrast. Funny there, Ned Stark. Anyway, I wanted a completely different book, and so I actually picked up Emily Henry's Beach Read. I did it as an audiobook again, and it was great. It was everything that I wanted in a light summer read. It was emotional, but nothing that was super triggering for me, so it was just like super chill for me to read. I felt like it was quite deep, and I wasn't expecting it to be that deep, and I really liked the setting, I really liked the characters, and it just did exactly what I wanted it to do. So I just finished that as I was at the gym, and yeah, I've now actually downloaded the ebook for Murtagh because I'm going away tomorrow, and I've got like a 11-hour travel day or something, and I've decided, not 11-hour, wow that's super long, like 7-hour travel day, and I've decided that I can't bring the gigantic book with me, but I really want to finish it because I feel like it's dragging on, if that makes sense. Like, I'm really enjoying it, but because I've been wanting to read the physical book and I haven't been taking that with me everywhere, I just haven't had a chance to just sit down and read, if that makes sense. So I'm pretty much going to do that. I've got the ebook on my phone, on my Kindle app, and I thought that I'd finish that tomorrow, and then I have a 4-hour layover in Amsterdam airport tomorrow, and so I thought if I finish Murtagh and I can like be done with it and feel happy about that, I might go book shopping. And I know I said I wouldn't go book shopping this year, but I've always really wanted to buy a book at an airport bookshop, and not a non-fiction, because you know what, I tried doing non-fiction at the beginning of the year and it just kind of stifled the mood. And so I am going to get a book that I really feel like reading, whatever the bookshop has to offer, and read an airport book. Like, I don't know, it's something that I want to do, so that's my plan. Anyway, I am going to leave this video here because you've heard me blab about books long enough, and I swear this is going to be over an hour. I don't actually know, but thank you for coming along. I hope that you enjoyed learning about my current reads and everything, And if you do care, I'm on GoodReads and TheStoryGraph. I'm not the most consistent updater, but I do enjoy seeing what other people are reading and everything, so I'm definitely on there. And yeah, I'll see you with another video very soon. Bye!